Hi there, welcome back to another Kenny Veach M Cave mystery video. Today we're looking back at Kenny Veach's original M Cave hike to see if Kenny left or dropped any hints or clues as to where he could possibly have been found after when he went on his final unrecorded hike, on the basis and theory today that Kenny Veach is still missing and never came back from his hike. Well, we're going to be looking at key areas on the map, as well as reviewing and analysing footage from Kenny's hike at key moments where he may have dropped certain clues to locations he could be found at. That's the aim of today, and we are going to be doing a map analysis. Later on, I will be addressing some comments as well, reading over them, catching up on the previous Kenny Veach video I did. So make sure to stick around for this full video to fully understand what's going on. We're also going to be making some references back to previous hikers who've been out there in these supposed particular key spots, and we can see if it can generate any new ideas or if we can reach some kind of conclusion at the end of this. Because whilst being away for quite some time and looking back now, there's a chance we might be able to pick up on stuff we've never picked up on before, okay? So we'll see how it goes today. What I do want to say, just as a quick announcement, shout out to Maria, a key individual on this channel, for their presence last night, their super chat. It was extremely good of her. Shout out to Maria, as well as shout out to King Samoan or King Salmon, depending on what name change he has at that time. Very good individuals. As well as for anybody who's watching right now in this live premiere, welcome. Be sure to share your thoughts, reactions, and leave comments in the live chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. Let me know if you agree with these points or disagree. And if you wish to elaborate, leave comments down below. In addition, down below will be a pinned comment by me with links to other areas if you wish to visit them. As for previous videos, if you want to catch up, feel free to do so. All available on my channel page in an easy order to follow. As for Kenny Veach shorts, I probably will be doing another one shortly when I have time. And besides that, we see if there's any other Kenny Veach videos to do. There are some in the background, but this is a more hands-on, more important, serious focus. We're retracing the steps by Kenny Veach and his M Cave hike, as well as influenced by maybe Kenny's past hikes as well, which could tie in line, right? Who knows? So the order, the structure today is, I think, likely I'm going to present to you first some of the key clips from Kenny Veach's original M Cave hike and talk that through, analyse some of the photos, and then add on with the previous hikes done by hikers searching for Kenny and also looking for M Cave, and then we can apply it all together onto the maps. So make sure to stick around and let's begin this video.
I'll show you that. And then the last time I came up here, I hiked up to the top of what they call Gas Peak, and I spent the night. It was a 2-day hike, and then I hiked all the way down to another valley over here and went past this mountain range you see on my right, all the way back out to the flat desert. Now, the camera doesn't pick this up very well, but it's a long way.
Just that small clip there, what I presented to you, was quite interesting and somewhat important based off the location he was describing, giving, as well as a key line which was used, very similar to a line he said to his girlfriend when he was going out on his final unrecorded hike. And I'll get back to that in a second, but just let me know your thoughts. What do you think about what Kenny Veach just said then in that hike video? Do you think he was truly dropping any hints or possible clues? Could it be a location such as Gas Peak where Kenny Veach headed out on his final hike and ended up getting hurt, injured, or finding something else he wasn't supposed to find? Let me know your thoughts down below. In terms of the way he described it, it was interesting. Okay, don't worry, we do have additional footage, which I'll share with you in a second from a different camera angle perspective. But as he was pointing over that way, I went to Gas Peak. Now, I remember Jeff Clark being quite interested in Gas Peak back then when Kenny Veach referred to it. A possible camping spot, resting on the top on the peak. You know, what was it truly like up there at the time? But, you know, at least for Kenny Veach, it was okay for him. We have heard in the past that Kenny Veach had got injured in the past, but I don't know where that was exactly. But Gas Peak, Kenny Veach describing it as he camped there overnight, and it was a 2-day hike. That's the key wording, a 2-day hike. And you might wonder, well, why? Because when Kenny Veach was going out on his final hike, he said to his girlfriend, I'm probably going to be 2 to 3 days. That's how long the hike's going to be. Now, normally, if it's going to last more than 1 day, then likely you're going to be camping out there, right? In some way or another. Ideally with a tent and maybe some kind of food and liquid, right? When Sean Horlacker went out there and did the Kenny Veach hike, and he was with a friend known as Mr. Jenkins with the beard, they camped out there overnight. And I think that was like it was like a 2-day hike or so out there. And I think it was done part 1, part 2, part 3 videos because of the length of it altogether. But when they went out, they were hiking there, but also camping. When Jay Chuck went out there once, he was hiking and also camping. And supposedly Jay Silverheels as well. As I said, we'll look more into him later on. Make sure to stick around for that. And with Kenny Veach, as described in his hike video, that previously on a different hike, he did hike and camp out there. So did he have all the resources with him, or was it more rough and bare like Jay Chuck? And you might wonder, why are we using Jay Chuck as an example? Because Jay Chuck described himself as a desert dog, you know, covering longer distances than most people out there, harsh environments and terrain, but also limited in equipment and items he had with him. I believe he had a backpack and some form of liquid, but in terms of having like an ideal tent, I remember Jay Chuck said when he did camp out there overnight, he was sleeping amongst the ground and the vegetation and the rocks around, but he wasn't using a tent whatsoever. He was doing it completely without all that. So that's quite interesting. That it makes me wonder, did Kenny Veach do the same thing or not? I want to know your thoughts down below. We can all do these like little mini videos and like branch off elsewhere down the line, focusing in on when Kenny Veach camped in the past. Did he have the correct equipment, or was he very strict with it? Because as we've seen from Kenny's M Cave hike video, he had limited resources on him. He's referring to how he's got a cooler with beer in it and water, as we've seen in that unreleased hike footage, which we analysed in the past. So, kind of, is he underprepared? Not so much underprepared because he's tested himself over time. I don't know if any of you remember, Kenny was talking about how he would test himself, measured the distance, how long can he go until he's desperate for water or for some kind of food, if he needs to bite on a bar or something, or protein, whatever, right? He limited how much he had so he wasn't too dependent on it and he could strengthen his body. A little bit reckless though, arguably speaking, but it seemed to work for him up to a certain point in time at least. But referring back to that short clip as it was described, how he went up that way and then the following day or so he came down one of the valleys, which I assume could be on the other side of Wild Horse Pass, as if you were going in that direction north to then go left, which would be west, going down to the supposed covered M Cave and down to Picture Canyon. So when Kenny Veach said, oh, I came down that valley and then I went down another one which was kind of narrow and it went in and out and stuff, I think that's what Kenny was describing as Picture Canyon, and then going all the way back to his vehicle, which would have been going back south. As I'm visualizing it on the spot, we can look at the map shortly on Google Earth, which will make it clearer. But one thing that I will say is, when, you know, looking back at this video by Kenny as he's describing it visually, how he says it doesn't do it justice, the video recording, but in terms of how I can visualize it and map it in my head, it's easier for me to do now compared to way back at the beginning when I was looking at the clip for the very first time, because the usage of the maps, of course, Google Earth doesn't take things exactly into proportion. You know, it can underestimate the height, the steepness and the depth of certain areas on maps, but you get a rough general idea of the location, and it can definitely help when you're looking at hike videos of Kenny or other hikers out there that are trying to find Kenny or find the cave in general. Okay, so that was one of the first clips, Gas Peak. We'll try and search that. Do you know what? We'll search it on the map right now, okay? The only reason why I want to do that is because I think that it doesn't seem to be listed or named on Google Earth, at least from when I looked at it. But what happens if we type it in? Let's just have a quick look at that onto the maps. And then once we've got that done, we can transition back onto the next video clip of Kenny Veach, okay? Here we are in the area. I do have it pre-typed in, but I just want to type it in one more time because it depends how it's spelled. If you're saying gas in actual gas, it's G-A-S, right? G-A-S. But this one says a double S. It was the only one that came up at the time. Nevada, USA, Gas Peak. So if I just spell it like that, first of all, what do we have here? As for suggestions, we got Gas Peak Road, Las Vegas, Gas Peak Road Camping Area, and just Gas Peak, Nevada. Now, if you've got an actual official camping area, I don't think Kenny Veach would be going somewhere there to camp because it would probably be more publicised. But if we go on this one, which is an actual peak, and it says peak in Nevada, you could assume, well, maybe this is the one that Kenny's referring to. But the one problem is, have you seen how far away it is? It's over this way. Sheep Peak is over here. On the other side is the Joe May Canyon. Let me just make sure I'm zooming in. On the other side here, apologies about that, is Joe May Canyon, which goes all the way up here. Wild Horse Pass highlighted. And just before it, Mine Shaft here, which Kenny Veach was stood near, right? That Agave Pit, and if it's not that, the Sage, whichever one. The way Kenny Veach was stood was facing Wild Horse Pass in his video, okay? His tripod was facing him, which showed the background over that way. So when Kenny Veach was facing north and pointing off to the side, which would be northeast, saying Gas Peak is up that way. Do you know where those mountains are? Somewhere up that way. But when we searched for Gas Peak, it's back that way, which is more southeast. So I feel at least that the location, what's on screen in the distance, is not the location Kenny Veach went to. When Kenny Veach was pointing over here, it was near to Sheep Peak. Take in mind, there's a possibility that not all peaks are listed or named on Google Earth. They may be officially named on other platforms, other map systems out there, but the reason why I'm using Google Earth here is because I can create the project, I can add the markers, and I can flip the camera, and it can be 3D. So there's more benefits using this, okay, and that's why I do it. But I can understand that there might be some key areas which are not named officially on here, but they do exist. What we will do though, nevertheless, is just take a look at Gas Peak down here, just in case, for whatever reason, anyone said this was the location. There's no harm in looking at it visually. It's still desert terrain. You never know, maybe Kenny Veach sometime in the past visited a place like this. We just go for it. As for anybody joining in right now, we're looking at Gas Peak, G-A-S-S. That's how it's spelled. Is this the exact place Kenny Veach went to himself? Probably not. I can imagine Kenny Veach went to a different Gas Peak, the one which is near to Joe May Canyon. But let's just see what's present, okay? Is it one of those towers? Okay, I think we've seen some of them in the past. Well, I remember seeing them. What was it? Adventures with Christian, where they were on top of a mountain. Was it Tickaboo Peak? And you had something like this on the top, and it was snowy at the time, overlooking Area 51. Not this one, but just reminds me. There's actually a dog there. What type of dog is that? I'm not too sure. It's got a long tail there. Moving on. Guess it's from ground level, someone looking up at it, taking a photo in their neighbourhood. Is that Las Vegas or the outer skirts? Wow. So it's quite towering. It does stand out quite a bit. There's another shot from that side. You've got some solar panels as well. Quite a few of them. Interesting. Of all things you could take a photo of on a peak, you took a photo of a sandwich. Now, where's that from? Is that from Subway or something? You got some meat on it, you got some cheese, you got lettuce, you got tomato. I think you got peppers on it as well. J-Chuck, did you take this sandwich with you? Well, there you go. You see, you come across random photos at times. That's actually a good view, that. You know, when you look back at J-Chuck's channel, he was known to go on peaks, climb up to him and then take photos and do panoramic views of the distance and what lies ahead, the depths. I don't know what direction we're facing in. Is that Nellis Air Force Base down there? Is that... Oh, can't zoom in. Is that Nellis Air Force Base? Not too sure. That looks like Las Vegas, though. Could be wrong. Got some tanks there. It depends which way we're facing. More mountains in the distance. More panels. Probably quite effective as well. Yeah, there we go. That should be Las Vegas, shouldn't it? It's pretty flat, isn't it? But in the centre, that's where the buildings and towers are at. Just fast. Go fast for a minute. Not too many left. This is an example of one of the dirt roads you can get when you're out there. It is quite rough. I know people say Lucin, Utah is pretty rough, but this one's worse because you see all those stones on the side, the size of them, where you can come across them on the road direct, like that one down there. And you go over it, it's going to be a bit bumpy, uncomfortable, and you know, some could puncture your tyres. I remember when SB Vegas Adventures went out somewhere. I don't know if it was in the Las Vegas desert. Can't remember if it was directly looking for Kenny Veach or it was a part of a different hike somewhere with a group of people. It was a convoy of vehicles, and either his vehicle or somebody else's ended up getting a puncture going down one of the dirt roads because it was very bumpy. I know Scott Natal in the past had a few issues as well, so it's quite rough. This one, it looks like there were stones collected to create a love heart. You can see that in the middle. Oh wow, that's actually a really good photo taken in mid-flight. Is that an eagle or a hawk? One or the other, like a bird of prey. Decent wings, and you got the white outline of it. Or is it a buzzard, or do they only exist in the UK? I'm not too sure. As said, if you wonder why we're looking at these photos, it's just get an idea, boots on ground view of things, how it can appear. Very dry tree there. Is that very spiky as well on the tips of it. Wow, there you go, that's another good view. Another view. And we got a board here. It says Gas Peak Trail. So why not read it out? If at any point anyone wants to correct or reinforce as to if Kenny Veach was referring to this Gas Peak or if he was referring to a previous one, if Kenny was pointing to visiting this one in the past, which took 2 days, well, it was in the wrong direction. He was pointing him. Anyway, nevertheless, let's just read. It says, at 6,943 feet, Gas Peak is one of the highest peaks in the Las Vegas range. A hike to the top rewards visitors with a 360-degree view that includes the Spring Mountains to the west, bustling Las Vegas to the south, a glimmer of Lake Mead to the east, and finally the vast Desert National Wildlife Refuge to the north. It says, the hike to the summit of Gas Peak is 6.2 miles round trip, so there and back. The route follows a series of side ridges on the north side of the mountain to the summit ridge, and then follows the summit ridge to the peak. And there's like an example of it highlighted in yellow. Obviously, it's not quite that easy to see, but you get an idea of it. And it seems to, what was that, gone to a main road or something? Maybe. Anyway, plan your hike. The route is primitive with a combination of an old road bed and user-created path. The route is often narrow and crosses unstable surfaces. Be aware of lightning danger. Do not hike the peak if storms are in forecast. Sensitive plant and animal species exist in this area. Please observe animals at a distance. Collecting any kind is not permitted on the refuge. This includes plants, animals, rocks, fossils, and historical objects. Hikers should carry a map and stay on existing pathways. Pack out what you pack in. So I guess that means no littering. Right. The way it's worded here, it's probably a place where quite a few people go to over time. Now, Kenny Veach described it in his videos. He likes to go off the beaten path. He goes like off-roading. He likes hiking in areas not many people go to. So if this is Gas Peak Kenny Veach was referring to, I wonder why he would go to somewhere like here. That's why it still makes me kind of think that maybe there's another gas peak within the area. Now, Jeff Clark, if you want to add on to that, feel free to do so down below, because what I'm thinking of doing is, if this was true, then we can always look back at it in a different video and do a map analysis specifically on this area. For now, we just leave it be. Okay, just back out of that now. So you see Gas Peak there. As for how it connects, to be fair, you got Joe May Road here, I believe. Yeah, there we go. Joe May Canyon, Joe May Road, which then goes on to Joe May Canyon up that way, Little Joe May Canyon. And Gas Peak is down that way. So a bit of distance. We could just do a quick distance check if you were measuring it from Joe May Road. Make sure I've got it. Okay. Do it roughly there, because that's kind of like where Kenny Veach roughly parked his vehicle. We do have some beacons and points to add on afterwards. I just wanted it not to get in the way. So unfortunately it's gone. There we go, Gas Peak. It's about 12 miles or so. It's just in front of Clark County Rifle Pistol Center and RV Park. Okay, so that wasn't Nellis Air Force Base. No, it was an RV park, what I pointed out. Okay, 2.6 miles. Nellis Air Force Base is over here. Okay. The Nellis test range is within the desert area, in case you're wondering. So, with that being looked at, what we will do now is continue the rest of Kenny Veach's little hike footage and look at the next possible clue.
I started at 7 o'clock, but I'm thinking the sun might be down by the time I get back to my truck. But the great thing about it is I have a big cooler full of beer waiting for me. It's going to taste so great because I didn't bring a whole lot of water and I only got like one candy bar to get me through, but I like roughing it that way. So I slept up in these mountains and it's pretty high. I think that's about, it's like 9,000 feet up there. And the camera just doesn't do it justice, but I slept on one of those peaks. I think that's the peak I slept on, and then I came down in the morning, and it took me quite a while to get out of this mountain range, and I walked almost all the way back to the highway, and my girlfriend picked me up, so it was a long trip. I was pretty wore out and beat up. But that's what I do. I'm out here having a good time.
So I just wanted to show you the rest of that clip in its full length. We were going to look at a still screenshot to the key point to where Kenny Veach was pointing at regarding where he was camping at. I'll show that in a second. But just to narrate and analyse what was said there by Kenny Veach, where he said about 7 or 7:30 in the morning, that was him talking about on his actual hike at that time what he was recording. That's the time he woke up to then go out and do his thing whilst still being alive on that hike. And as I just want to say quickly, as for anybody watching right now, new people to this case, this M Cave hike video, what we're looking at and analysing for clues and hints by Kenny, that hike video was not his final hike, okay? It was his final recorded hike out there, but he did go out again afterwards, and that was the time he went missing. or seen and reported as missing, and by the majority presumed dead. Okay? Just wanted to make that clear. You saw in that where Kenny Veach was panning around, I think past the mine shaft or so, he mentioned about he's got a cooler back at his truck, mainly full of beer and a bit of water. He's only got one candy bar. He likes roughing it up, testing himself, as described earlier in this video. Now, the bit about the cooler, that's a bit of a mystery within itself from some people's perspectives. Now, we have analysed the unreleased footage from Kenny Veach's M Cave hike video. If you would like to see that, it's on my channel. Make sure to look back. It'll be in the Kenny Veach playlist and it will be easy to find and it will stand out, okay? Unreleased footage of Kenny Veach's hike route. Why was it left out initially? Because Kenny Veach thought there was no point to it because he was disappointed. He couldn't find a cave. What's the point in including it in the video? But what it presented to us was a different perspective and a different view and angle and location, right? And it also revealed some little clues as like Kenny's mirrors being adjusted slightly. And that was anyone stood behind the camera. Was there anything else going on there? Well, if you want to learn more about that, as I said, look back at my previous video on it. Very interesting. But in reference to that water cooler, there was questions there as well about how can this be frozen if he's been out there that long? Why is it not melted? Etc. But the bit about the beer where Kenny said, oh, I've got a lot of beers to enjoy when I get back to the vehicle. Well, I'll tell you one thing, he didn't have the facial expressions of someone who was enjoying a beer because Kenny Veach was out there for quite some time and it's quite harsh and rough. In terms of the mileage in total, I think, what is it, 10, 11 miles in total as it would take. And that when Kenny Veach did get back and we saw the footage and he tried drinking a beer, he just couldn't swallow it. It was painful, the pained look on his face. And that's just because of the liquid he was consuming and maybe the amount of it when suddenly returning back dehydrated. It's not exactly the most practical things to drink. You're better off drinking a little bit of water, a few sips. You know, even people that might have been stranded in the desert, right? You don't want to drink too much water too quick because it can have impacts itself. It's either too little of this or too much of that, and you can get and receive consequences. So just little sips are more than enough, right? So that was just a little reference there and describing what Kenny Veach was referring to by the cooler. As the camera panned around, then he started pointing to the camping spot which he was at. And I guess he was referring to Gas Peak. We'll look at the photo in a second. And then shortly afterwards, he mentioned about the long hike and that he needed to be picked up along the highway by his girlfriend. I don't know if anybody heard the infamous within the video footage, like a strange female voice, female laugh, very spooky and mysterious, just because of the noise of it. There are people that are very skeptical of it, but there's a lot that are intrigued by it. Now, if you didn't quite hear it or you want to see an analysis on it, once again, I did document it on my channel. It is one of the most viewed Kenny Veach videos on my channel at about 160,000 views. So you should be able to find it fairly easily and you can watch it completely and just let me know your thoughts to what you think about it. I did play the clip several times back, so if you had trouble hearing it in this one, the other video will be more enhanced and easier for you to listen to. Okay, so check that out as well. So yeah, I mean, there are a few things I do want to add on, but I think to visualize the story more, we need to head on back over to that photo, that screenshot where Kenny Veach was pointing. In this photo, on the right hand side, if you wonder what that metal bar is or post, that's basically the mine shaft, okay? Scattered around on the floor nearby are planks of wood which probably belong to the mine shaft in some way or another. Take in mind Jeff Clark and anyone else, this is 2014, referring back to, okay? So in the distance, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at mountains, of course, but what direction are we exactly looking in? Well, it's more east. Maybe at a slight angle, slightly northeast, but mainly east, right, as you would see on the maps. And he was pointing, I think, somewhere over that way. I think there'll be a clearer image shortly, but he was pointing over that way, right? And, you know, from looking at it here, he described it as about 9,000 plus feet high. Well, when we're looking at Gas Peak, the other Gas Peak, that's at about 6,900 or something. So there's a clear difference in height. So the Gas Peak Kenny Veach is referring to here must be different to the one what we were looking at before. Okay, just put that in perspective. But the direction what we're looking in, more so on the left-hand side, higher up, there'll be Sheep Peak. Now, I guess Sheep Peak is next to Gas Peak. And I guess Gas Peak is before Sheep Peak. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, you know, when you're looking at it from here at least, it does look very rough, very rocky and steep. But there'll be certain ways to access those places. And we'll be looking at a response from one other hiker referencing Jay Silverheels, who was supposedly up there at one point in the past. We do have another image, which is more to the left, pointing over that way, and zooming on in over there, saying that's where he supposedly camped out at. And that's Kenny Veach referring to his previous hike out there, which lasted 2 days. So if you're linking that back to Kenny's final unrecorded hike, how he said to the girlfriend, I'll be 2 to 3 days, it would imply that Kenny, at that time of supposedly trying to find the M Cave, he was what? Planning on camping out there as well? I mean, the question of the backpack is still unsolved to this day. As for the contents in that backpack, if there was one, is still unsolved to this day. We know the firearm was taken and a camera only for taking photos. But did Kenny take any camping equipment? As said, we probably will be referencing that in a different video, so don't worry, we will refer back to it. So yeah, and then the finger pointing, just to try and mark it out, I guess. And then when he panned more to the left, how he referenced at that time, you know, it took about 2 days, how he had to be picked up by his girlfriend, Sharon Pilgrim at the time, along the highway. Now my question is to anyone, if anyone can answer it, if Kenny Veach needed a lift back home, he needed his girlfriend to pick him up, I assume that when Kenny went here initially to begin his hike, he was driven down by the girlfriend and not, you know, driving himself. If he was driving himself, well, you'd wonder, well, why did he need his girlfriend to pick him up then if he's got his own vehicle out there? Unless his vehicle broke down, but he didn't mention anything about that. So maybe he just got a lift out there and a lift back as well. But he said that it was quite rough and somewhat brutal. And he said in the past, Kenny, that nails would fall off and, you know, you might get a few blisters. I think Sean was a bit roughed up as well at times, and the sickness out there, vomiting, probably because of the extreme heat and stuff. It's not a place to be messing around in, right? Even if Jay Silverheels does wear sandals out there at times, but I believe that was a joke video itself. Probably best make that clear just in case Jay Silverheels has a bit of a meltdown. As you see, no hiking poles or indentations present, so that will please him at least. But you get the idea of the area and how it looks visually. As I said, we can go onto the maps in just a second and, you know, further analyse. You know, the key thing to acknowledge is places like that pointing in the distance, Sheep Peak, was it Hayford Peak, Gas Peak, and any others in the area, you know, other people would have been there at some point in the past. Maybe not in great numbers, but some people would have come by, whether it be directly looking for Kenny M Cave or people who are completely oblivious to the case. There will be a fair few people out there oblivious to the disappearance of Kenny Veach and the mysterious cave that vibrates and shapes like an M, right? And those people who are out there likely don't record it, document it, or upload it onto YouTube. I mean, some people have done, maybe Sheep Peak, and it was done back in 2013 or 2011, and even before that. And that was obviously before Kenny went missing, so there wouldn't be any motive there. But it's just weird at times to think that other people have been here, but maybe not for the same reasons. And then it makes you question all those unrecorded hikes out there by people, whatever the motive was for, how many people at the end of the day. I'd still argue and say that overall this area is still a very desolate place, and you're not going to get like a consistent amount of people coming and going all the time, right? It's a rough place. It's desolate and it's a demanding one for hardcore hikers for an obvious reason, right? Obviously, it's good when people do document their hikes out there. It makes it easier to reference, to people that have been here or been there and if they found anything or not, right? So I think without further ado, let's just head on to the maps now. Well, actually, no. Before we go on to the maps, I've just remembered we need to look at one of the key pointers made by one of the hikers out there that referenced Silverheels. So what you see on screen was actually by SB Vegas Adventures responding back to me regarding these areas of interest, the likes of Gas Peak, etc., mentioned by Kenny Veach. And what SB Vegas Adventures said was Jay Chuck in recent time went up to some of the far canyons towards Sheep Peak, but didn't go all the way. And that Jay Silverheels claims in his videos to have gone up to these marked areas and camped out there. I myself have not been that far out, but it's no doubt very rugged and steep. The Heart Attack rocks are where Aquachigger went and said he may have had a heart attack or felt like he was having one. So shout out to SB Vegas Adventures for, catching things up to me about where people have been. It's because I did ask SB originally that whether I was getting confused or not. I do remember Jay Chuck when Jay Chuck did his hikes up those ravines, ravine 1, 2, 3, and 4, and he had like a walkie-talkie with Jay Silverheels initially in the past of 2022, I believe, or it might have been 2021. But Jay Silverheels was supposed to go out there with Jay Chuck, but Silverheels injured his ankle, foot, or leg in general, so he couldn't really move, and Silverheels said he was in a wheelchair at one point, so Jay Chuck had to do it himself, but Silverheels assisted with the maps and the directions. Originally, Jay Chuck going up those ravines just to see if Kenny Veach was up one of them or if he fell off from one of the mountain tops and landed down into one of the ravines. Upon the investigations, Jay Chuck, treating it as a recovery mission, did not find traces, remains or clues of Kenny Veach, and that some of the ravines were either blocked off or became very steep or dense with vegetation at the time and rocks. So I don't know if those ravines link to any of the locations near what we're looking at today. At least from the top of my memory, I can't quite remember. But if anyone wants to fill in the blanks, you're welcome to. Okay. But with Jay Chuck supposedly recently going up to the far canyons towards Sheep Peak, I wonder why. Was it more of a recovery mission there, or was it Jay Chuck going in the act of spirituality and being free and open? Because I noticed Jay Chuck has changed slightly in behaviour over time. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that. Let me know if anyone else follows Jay Chuck as of recent time. That'd be interesting. But I'm sure when certain videos are done of the case, it might spark interest again with people out there. So it could help overall. It could have positive effects. But yeah. But SB saying, I've not been that far out myself. But I think SB said he was thinking of possibly doing it sometime. Well, I guess we'll see how time tells. I mean, you never know. Maybe this video in some way may help a little bit to SB Vegas Adventures. If any more future map analysis videos need to be made in anticipation of another hike out there, then I'll try and see what I can do. Okay. So with that out the way, and it being mentioned a bit about Silverheels, what Silverheels has claimed, let's finally go on to the project on Google Earth and see where these markers are at. So it may look a little bit cluttered to you with all the markers on screen, but I will explain the color coding behind it right now before we go any further. The blue markers are more to do with Kenny Veach and his M Cave hike, as well as key areas of interest and reference points. The orange markers are to do with supposed intel that was received from Gene Lovskovsky, who was exposed in a way by Susan Veach down the line as supposedly a fake member of the search and rescue team. More about that later. And then the red markers are in reference to where Silverheels supposedly camped at, which one of the two spots is where Kenny Veach camped at as well in the past. And the red markers, shout out to SB Vega's Adventures for marking them. Okay, and then I applied it into this project. So it was good of SB to do that. It was very helpful. Okay. I said gas peak is here. Yeah, gas peak here. We zoom on in. As for the actual marker itself, the KV car parts, yes, it may not be directly in the perfect area, but it's roughly around here, okay? It's just as a starting point where we always refer back to, as if, you know, you were visualizing beginning the hike, right? And up this way, we've got Black Gate Canyon, highlighted in a red line. The reason why that's there is a possible alternative route to get to Gas Peak or Sheep Peak. Not that it's guaranteed, but just as a suggestion, right? You know, people that have been hiking out there in real life, just let me know your thoughts of Black Gate Canyon. If you have gone down there, would you ever consider it if you haven't? Okay. But north, we've got Jeremy Canyon, as we said. The next key blue marker, we've got the mine shaft, which you can see it's basically parallel to this agave pit lower down on the ground. The mine shaft where you see that like brown mark and stuff, that's where Kenny Veach was stood, what I referenced just before. You got Wild Horse Pass there, which Kenny Veach did refer to, where you go up and over and you go way down there to the lower ground, and then you would turn left, heading down here, winding canyon, which would eventually be known as Pitcher Canyon, okay? I think it's, there we go, it's worded Pitcher Canyon down at the bottom. And this is roughly where the supposed covered up M Cave and the Keyhole Cave is at, right? Before that then, if you went up this way, where that other agave pit is, or sage brush, north, heading up here, is where the tent and sword was found, a bamboo concealed sword found by Scott Natal. Here, where that rock formation is at. I don't know how you describe it. It's like rocks side by side, and then you could like walk into it, and it was like a little dead end, like a little tunnel, if you want to call it that, a little passageway, but it was very shallow. There was a tent there ripped up on rocks and a bamboo sword, which was concealed and slightly buried in the ground. Who knows who it belonged to, if it is Kenny Veach or not, but that's a mystery in itself, if you're wondering. Okay. And in addition, when Scott Natal went back here, he did not find the tent. It was no longer there, so I don't know what happened with that. And I assume that Scott Natal is still in ownership of the sword. I don't know what he's done with it or if it's going to go anywhere. And as well, we got Sheep Peak over that way. But it's beforehand where we're looking at these markers, okay? There we go. Over this way, by Gene Lukowski, tent found at Hayford Peak and one near Hidden Forest Ridge. So this is in reference to in the past where an individual known as Gene Lukowski on YouTube with an orange profile picture commented, claiming as if he was part of the search and rescue team initially, that he played quite an active role at the time, and you know, he had quite a bit of intel to share and dates and keys, you know, information. Appeared as if he knew what he was saying, but I think Jeff Clark was a little bit skeptical of him. Susan Veach tried reaching out to the original coordinator or leader of the initial 2014 SAR rescue group when looking for Kenny Veach, and the leader said, "We've never heard of a person called Gene Lukowski." Whether Gene Lukowski is his actual name or he's just using it as a username on YouTube, the leader of the official search team back then didn't remember him, so possibly a fraud, a fake person, who knows. Will we ever see Gene pop up again? I don't know, but this is what you got to be wary, you know, on the lookout for, where people like this come along and appear as if they know what they're saying. Some people can easily fall for it, right? And basically these markers are here just as a reference point to that event. The time where Gene said that when going out there to these key locations, they found abandoned tents. Now, you could suggest, well, maybe it's Kenny Veach, but how many tents would Kenny really have? One at most. And the way he goes about hiking, I don't even know if he would take a tent with him, right? So that was just like a little reference there, as well as questioning him. as well. Take in mind the likes of Hidden Forest Ridge and Hayford Peak and those areas upon the, near to the Hidden Forest Trail, which goes up to that cabin. It is a bit more of a touristy area where hikers would go, right? It's not as rough or demanding in comparison to the likes of Jomay Canyon or Pitcher Canyon in some way. You get more visitors over this way. So if you're going to come across an abandoned tent, whilst you could say it's a bit mysterious, if it's an area where more general public visit, the chances of it being a general public person and not so much Kenny, the chances are higher there. But if you come across a tent which was found by Scott Natal, down here near Jomay Canyon, more offbeat area, beaten path, more desolate. Yeah, this is more mysterious as to who it belongs to. Yeah, zooming on out. Let's just focus back on the two campsites told. The story by Silverheels in his previous videos, passed on by SB Vegas Adventures. So does this tie in line where Kenny Veach was pointing? Well, we got the mine shaft here, right? And Kenny Veach was pointing off to the left of this screen. So we just rotate it around slightly and look up to where he was pointing. Oops, it's been a bit of a bastard. Well, it looks like it's actually in the right direction, aligned to what Kenny Veach was pointing to. Not so much Sheep Peak, but just before that. So I'd assume Gas Peak. Is that Gas Peak? Apologies if the camera does flick about, it just gets a bit dodgy. So it was more so these possible two areas. But the thing is, this is where Silverheels supposedly camped at. Now, higher up, this top of the peak, the top of the top, now is this where Kenny Veach was at, such as this peak here, I wonder. And did Silverheels camp lower down? Is that just because of the steepness of it? That it was a bit too difficult to get to the very top? I wonder. I mean, I'll be honest with you, looking at it from this angle, I'm surprised I was able to do this because of how glitchy it can be. But looking at it from here, this looks pretty extreme, right? In my honest opinion. And if it looks pretty extreme here, then can you imagine what it's like in person? Now, I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure if Jay Silverheels has any footage of this surrounding area, the campsite, right? Lower down. I know Jay Silverheels in the past was known to delete videos. At times, Jay Chuck deleted videos as well when he went out on hikes. Whether he made a mistake or he found something which wasn't that special, he deleted those videos, which was unfortunate. And one of the other key culprits was Artari, who would constantly delete videos and then whinge and whine about credibility being lost. Well, at the end of the day, you shouldn't really have much to hide. You put a video out there, it should remain up, so then people can always look back at it, right? And if for whatever reason it was incorrect, the video, well, you just do an update video correcting the wrongs. Giving an update saying, right, that previous video is incorrect. Here's the real truth. Something like that. It's not the end of the world. You upload a video, it doesn't quite go to plan, keep it up so it can all be documented and people can look back at it, because someone might find use out of it, but no one's going to have any use of it if it's not available and if it's been deleted, right? Just a thought there. So yeah, I'm not sure if Jay Silverheels still has the footage of his hikes, but SB said in other videos Silverheels referenced it. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm getting mixed up, but what was it? And Silverheels, if you're here, feel free to add on. There was a point where we were both in sync with one another, where I referred to you, Silverheels, being higher up and you were looking down at something. What was it about? Was it to do with looking down at the mine shaft? Was it looking down at some of those wild donkeys, horses? Or was it looking at some agave pit? I can't remember. You were in a certain area and you were pointing at it and you said I was spot on. Now, was it here or was it more so at the canyon or near to the fish hook as Jeff Clark references when he was looking for Really Robbins' canyon. It's hard to remember, to be honest, but if anyone can remember it themselves, feel free to leave a comment or so. I just remember some reference point. So we're talking about lower down. So this is the first camping spot. Now, at least on the maps, it does look a little bit rough. It looks very narrow, but as I said, looks can be kind of deceiving. You do have quite a bit of vegetation there. As I said, this is like the marker roughly pointed out by SB Vegas Adventures, so it could be a little bit off track, but close enough at least. This seems to be on a slant, or, on steepness. So how would you get up there, right? That's what we've got to look at today. It's not at the very top, but it's high enough. And then here, somewhere up here, we got the second camping spot. You can see down there the way it is. Now, are they canyons, sub-canyons more so, or are they like washers, or are they, what do you call them? Springs? I mean, you can see those like yellow lines highlighted, which were possible routes to get up there. There might be other ways as well, right? As I said, looks can be deceiving. These are just suggestions and pointers, right? But if you were up here, what can you see in the distance? Well, can you see? Do you know what? Or was it the tent and sword what I was referring to, where Jay Silverheels was near at? Yeah. Oh, wow. I've just remembered it now. I don't know exactly where, whether it be here or too far away, but Jay Silverheels was actually near to the tent and sword location before Scott Natal went down there, I think. But Jay Silverheels was never aware of it, and he never went down to that location to search, but he was higher up on ground, and he was looking down at that spot unaware at the time. And that's what I was referring to earlier. Wow, that memory. Yeah, I do remember it. Let me know, people in the chat, if you remember that time. It was very important and interesting. If you're at a key area before anybody else has been to, but you just didn't look yourself, it's that missed opportunity in a sense of what could have been there beforehand or what wasn't there originally. Just like with the mine shaft, like Jeff Clark has referred to, like with time it's been widened or it's been somewhat damaged, and it's like, at what point exact, and was anyone else in between who was present that could have documented the extreme change or not, or was it undocumented, not recorded at the time? Yeah, very interesting that. So if we just get back to lower ground, those areas highlighted in red are kind of like the areas what Kenny Veach was pointing up at. So whether it be in the eyes, the mindset of Jay Silverheels or Kenny Veach, how did they get up to those spots? Did Kenny Veach take the normal route up to the M Cave mine shaft here, working his way up from down there up to here, and then did he take a turn off to go up one of these, if you call it canyons or springs? As I said, the controls are kind of limited because it's on this stupid app. But two potential ways. I'll be honest with you, it does look very steep, right? Like this one. It winds in and out. Fairly steep, but is that a pathway or more so markings from where water would run down from normally? And we've got like a two-way here. So either you keep going up this way, which gets extremely narrow here on the rock walls on the left and more so on the right, as you can see. And then once you get up to this point, I don't know, it just looks like a dead end. Or maybe not. Maybe it branches off a bit to the left here, a bit more to the right. And then maybe you could keep on going, but at least from on the left-hand side, if it will let me zoom out. Where is that? Yeah, on the other side you got the campsite. Okay. So that's the route what we went up, where I said it was very steep and narrow. And then on the right hand side is campsite 1, and on the left side is campsite 2. Okay, so they're close to each other. And there seems to be different like pathways you could go up. If we didn't go straight up and went off to this triangle one, is it any easier? Well, yeah. It's not as narrow as the walls on the left-hand side. And you're getting directly to that point up there. So, you're saying that Jay Silverheels camped out there, or he said it himself. Did he have the tent, appropriate equipment? How long was the hike for? And as for the two campsite spots, was this all done in the same day, or the same trip out there? Or is it done on different occasions, if anyone can fill that in? If it wasn't that way, I like the one next to it. This one seems a bit wider when walking up to it. I said it's not like a general pathway this, it's more off-roading. It gets a little bit narrow here with these rock walls on the left and right hand side. Now, I will mention one thing shortly, because, you know, is there any M caves in this area? I mean, surely someone else would have seen it, right? Okay, so once you get up here, you could keep on going right to the top, but in terms of Silverheels, you go to the left maybe, but that looks very steep up there, very steep. And just on the other side is that marker. So I think maybe the more practical route is this one here on the left, that highlighted yellow one. That's what I would say at least. This one, not so much, but if you used to keep on going at least, you could get up so far, maybe almost to the very top. I don't know if that's what Kenny Veach did. I said looks can be deceiving, right? Lower down though, is there anything that gives off indications of caves, right? Whether you call these ravines or whatever, and people have been up them, not many, whether it be Jay Chuck or more so Jay Silverheels and maybe Kenny Veach. Anyone else near to the mine shaft, has anyone reported seeing any possible caves looking east towards the mountains? Any small caves, M-shaped ones? Anyone can confirm or refer to? I know Kenny Veach's footage was pointing over this way, but it wasn't quite clear. Sometimes it's easier using the maps because some caves, if they're on the side of a rock wall face, may stand out more because of the depth and shadow behind it because of the lighting. Flip the image slightly. Some of these shades are more so like ridges, overhangs of rock, as you can see. I mean, if you zoom in and look quickly, that looks like the shape of an M, but I think that's just a casted shadow of the edge. Here, hard to make out. But there's any caves up these like ravines or anything of interest? I mean, leave timestamps down below if you pick up on anything interesting or strange, right? Seems to be more rocky down at the bottom where the shadows are. And then as for this one, not so much here. Maybe that rock wall there of the mountain on the sides. Okay, so that was that little area checked out regarding going up that way and possibly reaching the very top if that's what Kenny Veach did do in that direction. As for the alternative pathway, going over Wild Horse Pass and dropping on down, there's like another ravine or whatever you call it here. A bit wider, maybe not as steep, a bit more gradual going so far up. And then that's where shit starts going down because once you look up that way, that becomes very steep. And even the camera angle doesn't like it. Once you get here, I don't think that's possible to climb up. You see? Looks very dodgy and steep, but you never know. But up that way is directly where that marker is at, Silverheels campsite too, so guess it depends, right? Just wanted to show you possible routes to the location. And of course, with Silverheels has been here and he wants to add on or make his own map analysis if needed, he can do so, or he can just do an additional one, whatever, it's welcome, right? So this area, very rocky, mountainous area, even less likely people to visit besides the lower ground of Jomay Canyon. You could encounter cold traps, which can be dangerous to the human body. It can be impactful, fatal. But then also you got the sheer, slopes, steepness. You could fall off. You could get some rock fall. A rock could hit you depending on how far up you are. And it could negatively impact Kenny. Now, if that really was the case, if we're basing it off that maybe Kenny Veach gave us clues, possible hints that somewhere in the mountains, that's where Kenny went on his final hike for some reason. To find the M Cave, or was he disorientated or distracted by other means? I don't know. Sound mind? I guess that's questionable. But at least when you got these ravines or canyons coming off, you got rock walls, and if you got possible caves up here, even if they are shallow, what happens if Kenny Veach was distracted or directed up this way instead to look for them in a different way? And whether he got up to the bit of Silver Hills campsite or past that point, what happened then if he was up there? Could he have just collapsed, succumbed to the environment, left exposed and open, and his bones could be scattered by now? Or could he have fallen off one of the mountains, one of the cliffs, one of the edges? A lot of people have suggested that over time, could Kenny Veach have fallen off a mountain? But where would he go? Well, that's why Jay Chuck did his supposed recovery mission, looking up the ravines, whether it be here or further on, going up them just to see if Kenny Veach was found at the top of one of the ravines, but that wasn't the case. But besides that, what happens if he fell down onto the other side? This side, not Jomay Canyon, but down here on the other side. Is that possible? Has anyone hiked on this side? You see? Is it possible whatsoever that if Kenny Veach was at the top of one of these peaks, Gas Peak, Sheep Peak, that he ended up having an incident and falling down onto the other side, somewhere down there? Let me know your thoughts down below. And has it actually been searched? Did the search and rescue ever go down there and investigate themselves? I wonder. The only other thing to highlight, more so on this side rather than on the M Cave hike side, is that so far down, which is moving away from it, I think in this area roughly, that there was a scent from Kenny Veach over here. Besides, back at the mine shaft, there was a scent from over here, which was going in a completely different direction. I don't know what that was all about. Was that signifying that Kenny went in a completely alternative way to get picked up by somebody? I don't know. Don't think we ever got down to the bottom of it, which is unfortunate. Interesting though, isn't it? If we can get any photos nearby, can we, of Sheep Peak? We've got some here, so maybe these might be of use. I don't know if we'll pick up or identify any people we know of that may have taken photos. 2012, 2023, more recent, but of ground level though, passing by the area. I think most of the photos were taken of people who were passing by and not actually hiking up there. 2021, 2019, 2019. Got to take in mind the weather as well, because winter time is slowly approaching, which can be very rough. 2020, once again, ground level, unfortunate. Sam, I want to know your thoughts in general. Do you think when Kenny Veach in his hike video said, oh, I camped up there in the past, was that like a reference of, well, if you go up there now, you may find me? Let me know down below in the comment section. All we're doing now is referring back to the comments of the last known Kenny Veach video I did, which was actually 2 days ago. I'd thought I'd leave this towards the end, just so it's easier for things to settle on in and for people to come along, into this live premiere at the time. As for everyone watching in the background and people who've just joined, welcome. Be sure to rewind back to the beginning, as the most important stuff was talked about at the start of this video, okay? But let's just acknowledge the comments here, see what people have had to say in response. The last video I did was talking about myself being silenced in the Kenny Veach case once again, due to false copyright music ID claims and the coincidental timing of it, how it impacted one of my previous Kenny Veach videos I did, because the 9 other videos that have received false copyright music claims were on the Dylan Rounds case. And you know what made it strange? Besides some people here and there, such as SB Vegas Adventures, who said that they've had multiple copyright ID false music claims over time because they've used music in their own video, that if you supposedly include the link, the reference to the channel, the music piece that you used, even if it's copyright free, by providing a link in the description or maybe comment section, it will eliminate the problem of these third-party groups claiming it themselves. So it kind of eliminates the problem. But if it does, then, you know, does SB Vegas Adventures do it himself if he has received all those claims? Has it still come about since? Because I just want to add on in that with my experience and the strange factor is that it was such a coincidence how all my Dylan Rounds videos were being targeted just because of what I was talking about in the case and the community. And then that one day where I said, oh, look, my Kenny Veach video is doing really well in performance. I was getting a lot of views on it, about 50,000. And it was a video from 2 months ago. And then the next day I suddenly receive a copyright claim on a different video, but on the Kenny Veach case. So the coincidental timing, it was like someone was watching me the night where I referenced the Kenny Veach case and one of the videos doing well. So someone thought, oh, in the background, I'll try and limit it, or I'll try and get it shut down in some way. So I think there's a bit more to it in a way. And as well as a reference, my previous videos in the past where I did actually give links, direct links to the music that I used copyright free, I still received a false copyright claim on them. So it did nothing including the link. And the recent video that has received a copyright claim, I did include a link to the composer, not to the direct video, but to the composer at least, and that still received a claim. So it seems very hit and miss. We got Cleo here though. Let's just acknowledge the comments though from this video. Just wanted to add those additional points on first. We've got this guy called Balls. Shout out to them, looks like a new viewer. Now my meme time is fixed. I don't know what that means. We got Glenn, back to the Kenny Veach days, of course. Got Cleo saying, so annoying what you're going through. Of course, you know, it's not just this, it's been Dylan Round stuff, then it's been the community stuff, and it's been other things in the past, and then there's been roadblocks and barriers in real life, as I've described over time, and also recent time. It's pretty shit, to be honest. But, you know, not much you can do. We've got Cat Loves ASMR, long-time viewer as well, came from the Kenny Veach case, saying, why bring an old video up now? Is someone flagging your old videos just causing you grief? Maybe. Just maybe, as like what was mentioned before, you never know. We got Juan saying it sucks. Yep, fair enough. Shout out to Juan for, you know, for their presence. Good individual, and I've seen them in the Dylan Rounds community videos of mine recently. So Juan, hola. We got ZX0. Shout out to ZX, good individual, big person on the channel. And shout out to their custom emoji to acknowledge them as well. Hopefully ZX0, you see this video. Let me know your thoughts on the matter, the case, and the possible clues given out by Kenny. So, yeah. Jeff Clark, what does Jeff say? Looks like more of a YouTube issue than anything else. They should verify what someone is claiming before tagging the video. If the music is not even on the video, they should ban the account making false claims and not the innocent video. However, there have always been these temporary accounts making false and bizarre claims in these cases, so I don't know why you are still surprised. Well, I think the surprise element was more so in, you know, the back-to-back nature of it. There's been times in the past where I've received a false claim, but it was just one out of nowhere. As of recently, last few days, I received 10. That's never happened before, so it was a surprise. For it to happen so quickly and back-to-back wasn't expected, right? But in terms of the nature of people maybe doing it out there because they've got a grudge or an obsession, there's no surprise there, okay? So, dodgy stuff going on. Jeff Clark more so responding back to the M Cave talk, saying, as to the M Cave, my latest video on my channel is about as bizarre as it gets. I thought the crystal skull in the mineshaft and battery draining / recharging issues when exploring it were bizarre on my third hike, but that had nothing on what occurred during my second hike. Half a day just disappeared into nothing, as is proven by those photo timestamps. I welcome anyone to come up with an explanation for that day when out there. And I think that's the time, Jeff, isn't it, where you felt the vibrations as well? Crazy. Check it out. So we've got Sunny. Jeff Clark responding, adding on, saying, a 3 hours walk down the middle of Pitcher Canyon on that sand gravel bed is completely inexplicable. That is an easy 30-minute walk at most. Hiking in Pitcher Canyon is actually very easy. It is getting there and exploring up the side ravines that is harsh and dangerous, as well as time-consuming, and the 2 drops over giant boulders. But aside from that, the canyon floor is fairly flat and free of obstacles. True. There's no way that leg should have taken 3 hours, and that is just one of the legs that took way too long. To put in perspective, when Jeff Clark went in 2022, I think, when he was trying to retrace the canyon of Really Robin, which is away from Jomay Canyon, more so west on that side. West side! But on that way, when Jeff Clark was going up it, he said it was very claustrophobic and very narrow and steep, the side walls. But it took so long, or he said it took him so long to get up there and explore about that he didn't have time for other areas. But that was because it was steep, and you had the loose rock fall as well, boulder or rock nearly hit him, so he was being extra careful and a bit slippery in some areas, right? More time consuming that, because you're being wary and conscious of the environment you're in, as well as taking it easier and slower. But we're referring to Jomay Canyon, what Jeff Clark's referring to. That's not as demanding in comparison, so it shouldn't take us long. So yeah, a little bit strange that. Maybe I can take a look at it myself, or maybe spread the awareness. Sunny saying salt. What Sunny is referring to here is there a possibility that salty pancakes from the Dylan Rounds missing person true crime case has an agenda against me with other cases I do out there? I don't know. We got this person called PFG. New viewer, shout out to them, saying Betty Hayward. So Betty Hayward is an individual that kind of originated from the Dylan Rounds case and community, more so from Jim Terry's YouTube channel at the time, and then eventually broke away from it due to darkness and falling outs and disagreements there, and got attacked for it. So I don't know why PFG is referring to Betty Hayward here, unless they know who Betty Hayward is. Feel free to elaborate down below. But as for the rest of the comments, that seems to be it. So some interesting points by Jeff Clark. If we need to refer back to it, or if I need to share my thoughts and opinions if there is time, then I'll do that. But yeah, very interesting. So if you do have any additional points or questions you want answering, make sure to leave a comment down below in this video in the comment section. And as well, if you wish to visit some of the links to the other areas on my channel and stuff, if you want to support the channel, the links will be down below. And feel free in general to like and share this video to help spread that awareness of the Kenny Veach case, the awareness of him going missing, well, supposedly going missing, and from the eyes of some supposedly still out there in the desert, but more so this video going along that idea and theory to spread awareness by liking and sharing the video, to see what do other people think about those possible clues and hints towards the mountainous area like Gas Peak or Sheep Peak, you know? I want to know your thoughts, and if there's additional people out there that can, you know, see it from that angle, it'll be interesting to see in general. So all in all, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you were able to understand it and follow through to the end. I appreciate that. And yeah, that's it for now. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night for now.